Whilst only directing 2 feature films, Greta Gerwig has already shown us her distinct style and what makes it so unique. In today's video, I'll be breaking down the cinematography of her first film Lady Bird, and in a later video, I'll break down how she shoots a scene. I plan to make these shorter videos surrounding a single film once a week, alongside the How a Director Shoots a Scene series. Today, I'll talk about everything from the preparation to the lighting, and what equipment her and Sam Levy used to create the look for the film. In an interview about Lady Bird, Gerwig stated that she wanted the film to look like a memory, but not overly so. Cinematographer Sam Levy, who had worked with Gerwig as an actress on previous projects such as Frances Ha and Mistress America, said that he wanted to turn her somewhat abstract visual concept into a reality, and worked heavily with their colourist Alex Pickle to make it possible. They spent nearly a year preparing for the film, even though the official prep time is only 6 weeks, which is standard for a cinematographer. They spent the year breaking down the script, watching films, and looking at different photography and paintings, which allowed them to develop a shared language. For example, this photo from 2003, shot by French photographer Lisa Sofati, which they described as plain and luscious. Sam Levy spent a lot of time researching light for the film, and took hundreds of photos to make diagrams of the sun's path so that he could plan for the best time of day to shoot the scene, as well as using Greta and Jonas Spachkarotely, the first AD, as stand-ins to create a shot list. They opted to shoot the film on location in Sacramento and throughout California, as well as the end of the film being shot in New York City. The majority of the movie was shot in a very controlled way, either on dollies or sticks, with only one handheld shot in the film. This allowed them to give more meaning to handheld. For the scene set inside the house, the lighting is naturalistic, but in the grade they push a very warm hue which allows us to separate Lady Bird's life in Sacramento from in New York City, where we are greeted with a much cooler grade. They used many practicals, and whilst this also creates depth in an image, it can also act as a kicker light, whilst at the same time still giving us a warm glow to the rest of the frame. The prom scene was another set in which they used many practicals and achieved a dreamlike effect. Even though it's a short scene, we get the feel of it immediately as a stereotypical early 2000s prom. The camera stays static throughout the scene, but at the same time close on Lady Bird and Julie. They use red to light the scene, which represents excitement and energy, that illustrates what the characters are feeling in the moment. One of the scenes that stands out to me is where she visits the church in New York after leaving the hospital. The warmer grade, which counters what we see in the rest of the scene set in New York, are very reminiscent of her old school's church, which immediately tells us that she is back in a place where she feels comfortable and safe. In effect, it creates a memory. The shots in Lady Bird's bedroom are also stereotypical in the way that they have fairy lights and have decorated the walls with pictures of friends and artwork that she has made. Like the rest of the film, it is in a very natural setting. The practicals create a nice hue and again act as a kicker to Saoirse. In the opening scene, we see both Lady Bird and her mum in the hotel room. We also never see them this close in the film again. This is also the point where they are most intimate with each other. There is a soft light coming through the window which creates a subtle silhouette on the two. It is described by Sam Levy as a relationship between Mary and Jesus, as this is the style of light used in a lot of religious paintings. They also use the technique known as frames within a frame, by framing them both in the window. The reasoning behind this being the fact that they wanted to create as many proscenium frames as they could throughout the film. This shot in the coffee shop where we see Lady Bird and Julie watching Carl perform with his band creates a very dark and somewhat murky feeling. The majority of the scene is kept dark, but they still reinforce the natural lights to make it more noticeable. We have a clean frame on both Saoirse and Beanie, but when we get our first close-up of Timothy, we see him through the eyes of Lady Bird as he is framed within a frame, which, as I mentioned, Gerwig and Levy wanted to create as many proscenium frames as possible. We then switch to centre framing and a slow dolly in. Centre framing is often used to create tension between characters, and using a zoom or dolly in only amplifies the feeling. Again, the colours are warm and create a cosy and safe atmosphere. They used the Alexa Mini and paired it with old Panavision Ultraspeed Mark IIs, known for their artistic lens flare and subtle star pattern bokeh, as well as using Panavision's P Vintage lenses, which have been redesigned and restored to modern housing, known best for their smooth organic image. Making digital not look like digital was one of the main issues that they had whilst grading, and the colourist Alex Bickle did an incredible job replicating film stock. Part of that was shooting in 2K on the Alexa Mini as opposed to 3.6K, as that would have been too vivid and sharp for the project. The grain that ends up in the film is actually just digital noise from the Alexa, which they amplified in post and used a lot in the midtones. They used the look of Xerox printers for the final grade, as it created the organic texture that they hoped to achieve. They did this because in the early 2000s, which is when the film is set, teenagers at the time would make photocopies to put in their rooms, and Greta wanted to capture that feeling on screen. I hope you enjoyed this cinematography breakdown of Lady Bird. If you have a film that you would like me to break down, please leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.